The Shadow Housing Secretary, Kevin Hollinrake, is with me. Good morning.
Good morning, Trevor.
Everyone thinks that the Starmer administration's had a pretty rough start. We've just been belabouring them. But your poll ratings have barely budged. Why aren't the Tories benefiting?
Well, we are. I mean, if you look at the real elections
Not
that
really.
count... look at the elections that count.
You're no more popular than you were before.
Well, why are people voting for us in local elections, in by-elections, in councils, then?
Oh, they're also voting for reform. Reform won, I think, 2 this week.
OK. So, since the election, Labour have lost 27, we've gained 24, Reform have gained 7. So, very good results in Fylde, in Dudley, in Essex, in Stock in Essex. So, we show on the ground, when our activists get out there and take the case to the public, as we need them to do, both new and old activists, and that's the key to this, when we get out there with our message about that if you vote anything other than Conservative, you'll end up with Labour. That's what you got at the election, and that's what you get in 2029 unless you vote Conservative. And if you want to get rid of the Labour government, as many people do, you need to vote Conservative and help us get across the line.
Oh, so it's all going very well then?
Well, those results are good, don't you think? I mean, of course there's work to do. Of course, and it'll take time for Kemi, for people to understand what Kemi's all about. And I worked for her for 18 months in the Department of Business and Trade as her minister, and I was nothing but impressed about the person she is. She's bold, she's optimistic, she's strong. She says what she thinks, which in politics I think is quite a rare commodity, sadly. So I think over time people will grow to really respect her. And I think come 2029, we'll be in a much better place in terms of convincing people to vote Conservative.
OK, well, that's the ad for Kemi. But let's test that a bit. Do we really understand what she's about? Two weeks ago, there were hundreds of farmers in their tractors on Whitehall protesting about inheritance tax. She failed to ask the Prime Minister about inheritance tax when they were just a few hundred metres down the road. This week, with the government under attack from its own backbenchers over a U-turn on, or the position on the WASPy women, she just ignored the issue. Is she making some pretty poor choices as leader of the opposition?
No, she mentioned WASPy this week in
she mentioned it in the first sentence of PMQs and then went on to ask about something different.
I think Kemi completely wiped the floor with Keir Starmer this week, and she's growing in confidence in the dispatch box.
You're not the best judge of that. But my point is she choosing the right agenda? Because as far as one can make out, she's not really being heard, and your poll ratings are just not budging.
Well, look at the family farms tax. She came out straight away, as soon as that policy was introduced, and stood up on that stage in Whitehall and said to those farmers, we get into power, we will reverse this. And Kemi's been quite clear that she won't come with new policy proposals at this point in time, but she knew that was so bad and so damaging to investment and to farming that she came out against it. And the same on business property relief, which actually is a much wider issue. Family businesses in the UK employ 14 million people. They pay £200 billion a year in taxes. And the Labour government is going to say to those family businesses, if you pass it on from one generation to the next, you're going to pay a huge amount of tax. Totally wrong. Will damage investment. The CBI said it'll cost our economy £9 billion and 125,000 jobs in this Parliament. Kemi's come out and said she'll reverse that policy also. I think she's making the right choices.
Does it worry you at all that the one thing we now know that she really would change were she in government tomorrow, from the public's point of view, looks like, the Tories support rich farmers, like Jeremy Clarkson?
Well, that's a misunderstanding of the issue. If you look at
that's politics.
Well, that's not a good thing. That's why I'm pleased to be here to put the record straight. So in my constituency, I've got a family farm. It's been in the family for generations. 350 acres, not some wealthy scheme to avoid inheritance tax. They make less than £50,000 a year. Their tax on that farm will be £500,000. It would take them 12 years to pay that tax amount off just through profits. How can that be right? For them to actually sell, they'd have to sell land, a third of their land, to pay off that tax bill. That family farm in 2 generations has gone. It's totally the wrong thing to do, and that's why we're opposing it.
Well, look, let's deal with what is probably really happening on the ground. The one party which seems to have benefited over the last year or last 6 months, at least, is the one party that's sort of come into being within the last year, and that's Nigel Farage's Reform Party. They've taken 1 in 5 of the people who voted for you in July, according to the latest polls. Is the Conservative Party on its way to becoming the junior party on the centre-right?
Absolutely not. And I understand why people didn't support us the last election. We did many things right, we didn't get everything right. But certainly on migration is something we did not get right. We didn't have the levers of power in terms of migration until 2020. We set the bar too low in terms of legal migration, and we struggled with Labour in terms of opposing our measures to control illegal migration. But we've committed, we will get those things right. We've got the levers at our disposal now. I understand people didn't trust us at the last election, but I do think when they see the policy proposals come forward, I think they'll trust us at the next election.
Well, let's leave aside the 14 years you had to get people to trust you. Let's just talk about now.
We did many things right in those 14 years. I can list them if you want.
I just said let's leave it aside. Let's talk about now. Is what you've just said an indication that you would move towards the position that Reform has taken on migration of net zero, and that you would agree with what Priti Patel, Shadow Foreign Secretary, said this morning, that at some level you're going to have to reach an accommodation with Reform?
Well, we've said we'll set a cap, which is the right thing. That cap will be set by Parliament, so it's in law, so people will have confidence.
Could be zero.
I don't know what the cap will be yet, so I'm not going to speculate on that cap. So it'll be much, much lower than it is today in terms of migration, quite rightly. But the Home Secretary, the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, and Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, have said there will be a cap, and it'll be something people have confidence in. But also we need that deterrent, which Labour have scrapped in terms of the deterrent for illegal migration, which was working and has worked in other countries. So we
the
need
word you're missing there is Rwanda, right?
Rwanda, but Australia is another word you're missing perhaps because it worked in Australia. So we will bring forward a deterrent of that nature.
All right, well, look, there's a lot of noise this morning about Elon Musk's potential donation to Reform. Anything from $20 million to $100 million being reported. Should the government prevent such a donation?
I don't believe so. That's his money to spend. I think as long as it's legal, and I think it can be spent through, it can be donated to a UK company, which is legal. I've got to say I have great faith in the British public. I don't think the British public can be easily bought. I think they'll decide at the next election who they think the best party is to run this country, and I think they'll choose Conservatives.
If by the way, Elon Musk suddenly had a change of heart and decided to offer the millions to the Conservative Party, would you take it?
Well, all donations are welcome. If he thinks we're the right people to represent the people of this country, then so be it.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Musk watching will have heard that. Thank you very much, Kevin Hollinrake, for your time this morning.